and welcome back. So previously we explored a little bit about life cycle, but in this specific video, we'll aim to understand the whole life cycle of an activity and of Fragment as well. So let's see, first of all, for an activity, what happens that when an activity launches, we get a set of callbacks for each of the event that happens in the back. So, what exactly are those events, and what is the purpose of all these callback that we receive? We'll be discussing that, and there is a lot more about what happens is that if the callbacks flow is being broken in mid, like if we don't allow the system to run all the uh, functions, and what happens about that. So, let's just first start with the activity. So let's say whenever an activity is launched, we get a callback for on create, and after that we get a callback for on start and then on resume. And after the on resume is the time when the activity is actually running and the user can interact with each other. But we don't exactly know what exactly is going on in the under the hood. Why do we get like on create, on start, and on resume, three different calls? So to explain that, let's just start with first on create function. So basically, the on create function is a callback that you need to override specifically because this is the class where you define that what kind of views are going to be drawn on this activity. So the layout file that you set and other initializations that is required that activity will be using, all those kind of initialization should be done in the on create function. So basically, this is a callback that you receive for creating the activity. The second callback is the on start. The on start activity means that now the view is created, the view is visible to the user, but the user cannot interact with that, but it's visible. So this place is basically a point where if there is some sort of state reloading, so basically this is the place where you should be restoring the state of the activity if there is configuration change or maybe the activity has restarted. The third one should be on resume. So the on resume mean is that now the user can interact. So the activity has got the focus and now user can interact with this activity. So this after this, the activity is running, user can interact with that. And let's say now the user jumps to another activity. So it means that this activity will go into the background. So if this activity is going to be background, what will happen is that on pause will call, and on pause is exactly same like on resume but in an opposite way. So the on pause means that now the focus has been taken off. Activity is still visible, but user cannot interact with that. And then on stop mean is that the view is also gone. There is no view. And let's say now this at this point the activity will be kept in the stack and another activity, let's say, will be called. But what happens is that let's say if the activity is like recalled and the previous activity, the next activity that was drawn has been taken off, and this activity has come to the foreground again. Now what will happen is that this time we will be getting a callback for on restart, and then on start. The start, same process, that this screen view has been visible, and then on resume, which will say that the user can now interact with that. And let's say after that user kill this activity as well, then what will happen is that it will call the on pause, on stop, and on destroy. And the on destroy means that over here all the creation were all the things that were created in the on create, now you should be cleaning those elements, components, or objects, or whatever you have created in the on create. So basically this is a very straightforward scenario for this. And what I have done is that I have created updated our previous trivia app that we had, and I have wrote some logs over here. So over here you can see in the on create function, I have this tag and then created. Same goes for on start, on resume, on pause, on stop, on restart, and on destroy. So what I'm going to do is that I'll run the application and I'll see what happens if I what happens when activity is loaded and what happens if we do different kind of scenarios. So what will I do is I'll open the logcat and I'll copy this tag and I'll paste it over here, and then I'll run the code. And once I do that, you can see the screen is visible to me. The on create was called for the activity, then on start was called, and then the on resume was called. Now let's say I take this activity to foreground, sorry, background, and I call the home application. So let's say I press home. Now you can see that I called on received on pause callback and then on stop callback. On destroy was not called this time. But let's say if I jump back to this, what will happen is that it will restart the give me the callback for the restart and then on start and then on resume call. Now this time what I'm going to do is that I'll close this activity. So let's say if I close this time you can see that I receive on pause, on stop, and on destroy. So this is very straightforward implementation, or you can see understanding of how these callbacks work. But there can be, let's say, I want to create a scenario where I want to skip all these four functions, the on start, on resume, on pause, and on stop to be called. So let's say what I want to do is that only on create and on destroy should be called. This is kind of a trick question that is being asked in the interviews as well. So how do we do that? Let's say uh, if I close the activity over here. So let's say I want, as soon as the on create function has been executed, what I want to do is that I want to close this activity. So over here, I'll be calling finish, which means this will kill the application. So what will happen is that, let's say if I clear this, run this again, and now let me just clear it again. So guess there is some issue with the logcat. So what I did, I just wrote a finish over here, and then now over here you can see that only the on created and on destroyed were called. So it didn't call the remaining on start, on resume, on pause, on stop method. And why is that? Because it didn't created the, so basically over here it did initialize the stuff, and it on destroy was called against that. But let's say we didn't, over here we added finish, which means that on start was never called. So the view visibility callback was never given to us. It means that it will not call the on stop as well. So what I'm going to do is that, so to better explain this, I'm going to cut it from here, and then over here I'll add it to the on start function. So this time what will happen is that the on create will be called, on start will be called, but on resume and on pause will not be called, and then on stop and on destroy will be called. So let's just run it and see if that works. So like over here, you can see that we call the all created, it called the started, it called stopped and destroyed, but it didn't go for the on resume and on pause. So basically, this is just an explanation of how the creation and the destruction of each function is interrelated. So that the on create is related to the on destroy, the on start is related to on stop, and same as the on resume is related to the on pause. So if the like the first method is never called, it's possible that the second will not be called. But this is just a, normally it doesn't happen like this, because you never want to destroy or kill your activity right by like calling this function, but just for an explanation uh, that this thing works like this. And so you just have to know about this. Now the second thing is the fragment um, life cycle. And a fragment life cycle means that what is a fragment, when a fragment is created, what actually happens. And you can see in a fragment life cycle, we have multiple methods. We don't have like lesser method, we have more method as well. So what exactly happens when you uh, add a fragment to an activity and a fragment is loaded? So for the first thing, when a fragment is added, the first function that we receive is a on attached call. The on attached callback mean is that this time the fragment is added to a host. So basically, as you remember, a fragment cannot be created without a host, without an activity. So what happens over here, the on attach is basically a callback which tells that the fragment is being attached or added. The on create is basically a place where you would like to do the creation of those components that are required for the fragment. This time, like in activity, it's slightly different than that because you will be setting your views, inflating your views differently with the fragment, and that should be done in the on create view. The on create view is responsible of getting a view from a developer point of view. This function basically require you to return a view object that will be drawn over the fragment. So this function is just like in activity when you set content view. This function is the place where which you should be overriding to set your own custom view. And once the view is being created, the view sorry, this function name has been uh, wrong. It should be on view created. So this basically this specific when a create view function is called, we get our on view created function, and after the on view created, we receive on start. It's just the same that now the view is visible, but it's not interactive. When on resume is called, it means that the focus has been achieved and now the fragment is active and user can interact with that. And same goes with that. And let's say if the fragment has been gone to foreground, sorry, background, or maybe it has been destroyed, what happened is that on pause is called, and then on stop is called, and then on destroy view. So basically, it's just the same thing over on in the pause on pause section. It means that the focus has been taken out. The on stop mean is that the view is not visible right now, and then on destroy view mean is that the view object that was created will be destroyed, and then the on destroy callback is given where you can basically destroy any component that you created in the on create section. And then on detach is basically detaching the activity from like the host reference that has been assigned to that fragment, and then the fragment is destroyed. So if I show you in the in the live action, we have this menu fragment. What it does is that, let me just take out the finish. Yeah, okay. So what I have done is I have basically created all the functions, and what I'm gonna do is I'll add this to the detach as well, so that you know what exactly is going on. I have this on attach function, on create view, on view created, on start, on resume, on pause, on stop, on destroy view, and on detach. So when I let me just replace the tag over here. Okay, and now I'm gonna add the tag over here and then clear it. Now I run this specific function. Sorry, if I run this fragment, what will happen is that this fragment was loaded and it says that on attach was called, then on create was called, then on create view was called, then view created was called, started, the activity started, on resume was called. Now let's say if I close the fragment from here, if I go back, what happened is that on pause was called, on stop, view was destroyed, the total fragment was destroyed, and on detach was called. But what happens if I, let's say, jump to another activity, another fragment? So let's say I clear this and I want to go to another fragment. So I click on the start because you see the on pause was called for that fragment, on stop was called, and the view destroy was called. So the view was destroyed, but the view is destroyed, but the on destroy or on detach was not called because the fragment is still there in the stack. So let's say if I go back, you see the view created, start, and resume was called. We didn't get the on create callback. We didn't, but we did get the create view call so that we can recreate the view. So this is basically how the fragment lifecycle works. And we will be using these callbacks in our future application. So I hope you have understood more about the lifecycle of activity and fragment in details. For this video, I guess it's enough. And I'll be seeing you in the next video where we will be creating another app using these lifecycle functions. So please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.